In everyone's life, there's something rarely spoken aloud, a hidden truth that many sense but hesitate to acknowledge. The desire to be a good person, to adhere to moral principles, contrary to popular belief, can lead to shattered hopes and the destruction of carefully laid plans. This isn't about commonly accepted virtues like kindness, empathy, or willingness to help. It's about something deeper and darker, lurking in the subconscious, influencing decisions, and compelling one to sacrifice personal interests to maintain harmony. It's worth pausing to reflect on those moments when the right path was chosen, when silence was preferred to conflict, when sleep came with the realization that far more was given than received. Recall those instances of self-sacrifice when, deep down, there was a glimmer of hope for recognition and gratitude, for sincere words like, "I don't know what I would do without you." But, as a rule, expectations were not met. The paradox is that being good never seems enough. No matter how much is given, there will always be someone who wants more, who consciously or unconsciously exploits kindness for their own purposes. What happens next? The answer may surprise you. Yet, paradoxically, no one rushes to admit their responsibility for what is happening. Those around you, those who ruthlessly exploit, manipulate, and neglect, do not consider themselves guilty. The truth is that the individual allows it to happen. Deep down, they find a peculiar satisfaction in feeling like a victim, in martyrdom, in the aura of being a good person. From childhood, they have been taught to believe that virtue gives meaning to existence. But within this lies a destructive force, gradually eroding life. The most tragic aspect is that the scale of the problem goes unnoticed. It penetrates not only relationships with others but also self-perception. The personality becomes so firmly intertwined with the need to be useful, needed, and good that the individual loses sight of themselves outside this role. The question arises, when was the last time they stopped to listen to their true desires? Not what is considered right, not what will make others happy, not the expectations of those around them, but their innermost aspirations. Have they allowed themselves to answer this question without feeling guilty? Perhaps it's worth considering that all beliefs about oneself are nothing more than an illusion. Being good is just a mask, a defense mechanism designed to protect against something buried deep in memory. After all, no one is born good. This quality is instilled, assimilated as a survival strategy. But, like any strategy, it comes at a price, which must be paid throughout life. Perhaps this is not obvious at the moment. Perhaps the thought flashes through the mind, what's wrong with kindness? What's reprehensible about wanting to help others? Theoretically, there's nothing wrong with it. However, in reality, kindness has turned into a kind of cage in which the individual daily hangs decorations of excuses, telling themselves, "This is my essence, I cannot change, this is right." But here's the problem, this cage does not provide protection but only isolates from the outside world, slowly but surely destroying the personality, so imperceptibly that it remains outside the field of awareness. Has the question ever arisen as to why one constantly feels exhausted? Despite all the efforts directed towards the good of others, the feeling of inner emptiness persists, a sense that something is missing, something unattainable, regardless of the effort expended. This is not a random coincidence but a natural price to pay for existing in the shadow of another's personality. And here begins the most alarming thing, what if this kindness is just an illusion? What if, deep down, all actions are dictated by hidden manipulation? In every person's life comes a moment of truth when they realize that behind every act of help, behind every sacrifice of personal interests, there is an expectation. Even if it's the most modest, the most fleeting, but an expectation of gratitude. A person does good deeds not only for others but also for their own satisfaction, for the feeling that they are making the world a better place. However, when the expected gratitude does not come, when the cherished "thank you" is never heard, disappointment engulfs the soul, and a feeling of one's own uselessness appears. A familiar feeling, isn't it? And at that moment, the realization comes that not everything is as perfect as it seems. No one is perfect. True kindness is selfless, it expects nothing in return. But in every human action, even the most noble, there is always a shadow of expectation, even if unconscious. That is why the lack of proper reaction from those around us is so painfully perceived. It's not about them, but about the deep-seated need to be loved, to be accepted, to prove one's worth in this world. But it's worth hearing the truth that not everyone dares to speak. To earn your place in the sun, you don't have to be good. You don't have to constantly sacrifice yourself to prove your worth. A person's true value lies not in their actions, but in their essence. Until this is realized, a person is doomed to an endless cycle of self-sacrifice, giving everything until nothing remains of themselves. However, this is just the starting point. Now that the seed of understanding has been sown in the soil of the mind, it is time to delve into the origins of this problem, because it is much more complex than a simple call to stop being agreeable. If the solution were on the surface, it would have been found long ago. The real question is, why is it so difficult to give up the desire to be good? What motives lie behind the irresistible desire to please, to be helpful, and to push one's own interests into the background? This question needs to be carefully examined, as it is here that the key to liberation lies. Without understanding the root causes of this need, the chains of dependence on the opinions of others will remain unbreakable. Does the person realize that in most cases their agreement is dictated not by a sincere desire to help, but by a fear of the consequences of refusal? The fear of rejection, exclusion from society, and being labeled as selfish, that's what drives them. But therein lies the paradox: refusal leads to the loss of oneself, turning a person into a secondary character in their own life, an addition to other people's stories. And the saddest thing is that this process happens unconsciously. Think for a moment, how often have you said yes in situations when your inner voice was desperately screaming no? How many times have you had to go with the flow, believing that it was the only right thing to do, only to feel burnout, exhaustion, and a bitter sense of resentment? And what happened next? Did anyone notice the self-sacrifice, or was it taken for granted? The harsh reality is that once you get into the habit of giving everything away without hesitation, others begin to take it for granted. It's not that these people have malicious intent, it's that you've trained them to treat you that way. And when, finally, an attempt is made to set personal boundaries, others look at you with incomprehension and even condemnation, as if you've turned into a villain. Familiar situation, isn't it? But it is important to understand that no one is specifically to blame. It's about behavioral patterns learned from childhood, often unconsciously. Perhaps the person grew up in an environment where being kind was the only way to earn recognition and love. Perhaps it was instilled from an early age that value is determined solely by what a person can offer others, rather than who they are as a person. And these lessons, deeply rooted in the mind, continue to shape every decision and define the nature of relationships. Let me share an observation that may have escaped your attention: true virtue is not the same as simply being kind. Kindness, devoid of honesty, turns into self-denial, into a sacrifice of one's own interests. True kindness originates in self-care, because if a person is not able to show compassion to themselves, respect personal boundaries, and meet their own needs, then their generosity towards others becomes just a form of self-sacrifice, benefiting no one. In this context, a paradoxical task arises: to learn to be selfish. Yes, selfish, but not in the sense of neglecting the interests of others in order to achieve personal goals, but in the sense of being able to prioritize, take care of oneself first, and fill oneself with energy before trying to share it with others. After all, as you know, it is impossible to drink from an empty well. And you know what? That's perfectly normal. It's okay to say no, set boundaries, and not meet other people's expectations if it's necessary to stay true to yourself. However, don't be under any illusions, this path will not be strewn with roses. Resistance from others is inevitable, because they are used to your willingness to help. But even stronger resistance will arise within you, in the form of an inner voice accusing you of selfishness, inadequacy, and lack of virtue. This is the main secret: this voice does not belong to you. It is only an echo of the expectations of others, which for many years have shaped your perception of yourself. And you have the right to ignore it, you have the right to choose a different path, based on self-love and respect for your own needs. The author encourages viewers to take action and self-reflect. He invites everyone who watched the video to leave a comment containing a phrase that reflects personal experiences and readiness for change. This can be a simple statement about prioritizing one's own interests, or a profound realization of the need to stop sacrificing oneself. It is emphasized that the very act of writing down and declaring one's intentions is an important step towards transformation. The author also invites those who resonate with his words to subscribe to the channel, where complex and uncomfortable questions are raised, fostering personal growth and an honest look at oneself. In conclusion, the author emphasizes that kindness should not be synonymous with self-destruction. It is possible to combine kindness, strength, freedom, and authenticity. He encourages viewers to begin this journey of change right now, posing a rhetorical question about their readiness to take this step.